Chapter 1071. Thea saw that Hera was not wearing a crown but a retainer. Needless to say, Zeus had appeared and the throne of the god of gods had returned to him. She already had some guesses about the following topic. Why did you put a shackle on Ison and make him lose his memory every few decades? Diana was not happy to see her father at all. She was the first to ask. It turned out that Zeus was also good at shifting the blame. That child has the power to control the storm. If it is not released, it will cause a huge disaster. I only wanted him to live a normal life, so I limited his growth with his memory. Diana looked at Thea. She knew that Thea had the ability to change reality. Since she could change it, it should not be difficult to simulate and verify Zeus' words. She closed her eyes slightly and simulated Ison's physical condition. He was a peaceful and sunny young man, but the power to control the storm in his blood would increase with age. If his memory was intact, it would cause a disaster. The improvement of his ability would also lead to the growth of his ambition. There were no Superman or Batman to maintain order thousands of years ago. Diana was still on Paradise Island at that time. The Martian hunters had not yet arrived on Earth, the gods had retired, and the ancient mages were not united. A demigod with full power who was good at controlling the storm would indeed disrupt the development of mankind. Now, Ison only had power but did not use any means. He did not even know about these abilities. As long as he was not severely stimulated, theoretically, his ability would continue to be hidden. Thea nodded and confirmed that Zeus was not lying. However, the old man's attitude towards his children was really cold. He protected his prestige and justice as the god of gods, but sacrificed thousands of years of Ison's life. His memory would be reset every 100 years. The original personality would not be completely destroyed but would accumulate in the spiritual world. This was why they felt that this young man was a little silly. Thea was very sure that this young man was also a chess piece of Zeus. Whether it was to bait Diana or for other reasons, she did not know. However, it finally played a role today. Among these capable old men, the god of gods was majestic, Darkseid was domineering, and Zeus was astute. However, after a long time of scheming, it was all in vain. The result of his efforts to break free from fate was that fate would bind him even tighter. What's the matter? If it's not too much trouble, you can tell me now. Thea didn't like this scheming old man, even if he was Diana's father. His tone was firm, leaving little room for negotiation. Is the multiverse about to undergo a great change? Zeus asked. Thea nodded. Yes, why? You want to be in charge of this? Zeus coughed awkwardly. He might have been able to think about it if he was in his prime, but wouldn't heading to the dark multiverse in his current state be a suicide mission? I meant to ask if there is anything in that world that can help me stabilize my divine power. The divination said that there is an item there that can help me. This question was not abrupt, and Zeus had a good grasp of the situation. The decline of his divine power was partly due to him, partly due to the environment, and partly due to Sia's frequent inhalation of his divine power. But they all knew that, so no one talked about it on the table. To be honest, Zeus' divine power had helped her a lot. She could reject things that were too troublesome, but things that were not troublesome would be difficult to handle. Whether it was from Diana or herself, she owed Zeus a lot. Let me see. She didn't give him a definite answer. Her gaze pierced through the layers of barriers and looked into the depths of the darkness. 1 world, 5 worlds, 10 worlds. Her gaze kept searching for anything related to the Greek gods. Surprisingly, she really found a piece of equipment. There is indeed a piece of Greek god equipment that suits you. If you get it, you will be able to maintain it for another 10,000 years. Zeus was overjoyed, but then his face stiffened. But I can't get out. This equipment. I'll go get it. Diana said firmly. Thea was a little surprised, but she could only accept this result. The old thing had calculated everything. Didn't Diana know that she had been tricked? She knew, but she still made this choice for the sake of the bloodline connection. Since they could not agree with each other, the two women left the heavenly realm and saw that Ison had already woken up and was fishing happily from afar. In the end, they did not disturb his life and turned around to return to the new planet of creation. Diana knew that she had agreed too rashly. She didn't dare to look at her now, and served her tea like a little wife. Thea coughed, and she quickly lowered her head in a respectful manner. Do you know your mistake? I know. Thea pulled Diana over and placed her on her knees. She raised her left hand and smacked Diana's butt. She had to admit that it felt good. The more she hit, the more she enjoyed it. It was rare that Diana didn't resist, so she had to teach her a lesson. Perhaps sensing that she wasn't angry, Diana instantly flipped over and pushed her to the ground. Is that enough? Don't be angry. The young mistress wanted to use the same trick again and continued to pretend to be angry. Unfortunately, Diana didn't fall for it this time. Thea didn't mean to be angry, and immediately raised her hands in surrender. I'll go get that equipment, and we'll ignore him in the future, Diana promised solemnly. But it's hard for you to go there now. Besides, there's the road sign. Bruce is the road sign, right? Call him over. The two discussed the plan of action and contacted Bruce on Earth. He helped the old butler settle down and was dragged to the new creation star. After understanding their intentions, Bruce was a little dizzy. Why is it still my nightmare? Martin Luther King only had one dream. How many dreams do I have? Isn't it a little too many? Thea looked at him angrily. There's a Batman in that world who has a crush on Diana, cough cough. Cough cough. Two coughs sounded at the same time. Diana looked at Bruce in surprise. So you're that kind of person? Bruce was also confused. He asked himself if he liked Diana. Of course he did. After all, the Valkyrie's charm was there for all to see. Unless one was blind, both men and women would be tempted. But in all honesty, Bruce could swear on his parents' name that he only thought about it outside of work and didn't do anything else. He hated this dark multiverse to the core now. This universe had infinitely magnified the tiny idea in his heart and showed it to everyone, making him blush and embarrassed as he stood in front of the two women. Chapter 1072. Bruce could not refute the facts, so he might as well not explain. He could only lower his head and pretend that he did not hear anything. Thea snorted and continued, Ares from that world slaughtered the gods and used the gods' divine power to create a helmet. That helmet would amplify his own power by 100-fold. He was truly the god of war. Diana and Bruce pulled themselves out of the awkwardness and listened to her story patiently. The righteous alliance was wiped out. Diana destroyed Ares' helmet at the cost of her life and died in Batman's arms. She looked at Bruce strangely. Don't describe these details. I'm begging you. Bruce looked at her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Oh, it's weird when I talk about it too. Anyway, in the end, this Batman put on the helmet that gathered the gods' divine power and defeated Ares. He also became a killing god and called himself the merciless war demon. Our goal is that helmet. With the divine power of the same origin, Zeus can live for another 10,000 years. Thea explained the mission briefly. This time, she did not need Batman to follow her. She was prepared to go there with Diana, just like when they stepped out of Paradise Island to fight Ares. However, because they were too powerful, Thea could only send a projection to accompany Diana's clone. They still needed Daniel's help to teleport. With Bruce as a reference, they quickly located the location. At the same time, they made some noise in the world of the laughing bats to attract Barbato's attention. The two girls prepared themselves and teleported over quickly. It was still a world of ruins. There were more survivors here than in the world of the laughing bats. However, their wills were also destroyed. The two girls flew in the air and saw many ordinary people in ragged clothes kneeling before the statue of the merciless war demon, begging him to give them a way out. Batman, who had transformed into the merciless war demon, was the only true god here. All the beliefs of the mortals belonged to him. He relied on himself to maintain order. He was the law, the judge. Everything and everyone had to be judged by his standards. Those who met his requirements would live, and those who didn't would die. Thea was still reminiscing about the last time the two of them set off to fight Ares. Diana, on the other hand, was furious. This Batman was abusing the power of the Greek gods and doing things simply and crudely. She wanted to get rid of this tyrant with her own hands. "Can you see where he is?" Diana asked as she organized her equipment. Thea had once again returned to her archer's attire. In her hand, she held the longbow that she had not used for a long time. As a projection, this body did not have much combat power. She could only slack off from a distance, just like how she dealt with Ares in the past. Upon hearing Diana's question, she opened her eyes and looked around. At the same time, her main body cooperated with her observation and quickly found her target. "Judging from the location, it looks like Paradise Island," Thea said uncertainly. Diana was silent for a moment. Then, she gritted her teeth and said, "Let's go." She took the lead and flew away. Thea followed behind her obediently. After flying for an hour, they arrived at their target's location. The two girls were familiar with this place. This was Paradise Island. Compared to the devastated world, this Paradise Island still maintained its basic appearance. It was just that there was no one around and it was eerily quiet. Thea was not a newbie who had entered a parallel universe for the first time. She reminded them in her usual tone. "There's only one guy here. I'm afraid the others are all dead." Diana's tone turned colder. "I know." As soon as they finished speaking, a rumble came from the ground. A figure rushed out from the ground like a cannonball. It was a tall figure wearing a dark blue full-body armor. There was a Wonder Woman eagle emblem on his chest. He held a giant blade made of pure energy and wore a helmet with bat wings. Is this helmet really made by Ares? Why would he make a bat helmet? Does he have nothing better to do? Milady complained in her mind. "I'll deal with him," Diana said firmly. Thea did not mind. She stood aside and helped to hold the fort. Or rather, she slacked off. Diana from another world. The man in the armor seemed to have not spoken for a long time. His tone was a little sluggish. The voice that came out of the armor was even more muffled. "Daughter of Zeus, stop. War is not a game. Fear it, respect it, because I am the god of war." The war demon Batman seemed to have some mental issues. At first, he was still looking at Diana, but then he began to talk to himself. He talked until he was on fire. He was really on fire. Blue flames rose outside his armor, and he looked like a god that had walked out from ancient times. Diana was ready to charge with her shield. She was confused by this guy's random words. She turned around and looked at Thea. "This guy is probably crazy. Kill him and take the helmet back. Our mission will be complete." She was too lazy to watch this drama queen. She just needed to remember that Batman was crazy. The other details were not important. Diana agreed. She stomped on the ground with her right foot and jumped a few dozen meters. She slashed down with her sword. The war demon Bat, who was wearing thick armor, did not back down. He did not care about the Vulcan's sword at all. He raised the giant energy blade in his hand and slashed at Diana's waist. The two sides entered a deathmatch mode as soon as the battle started. Diana's doppelganger was about the same strength as the war demon bat. However, her vision was much better than her opponent's. She used her shield to block the giant blade. At the same time, she kicked the opponent's head. Diana of this world could knock this thing off Ares' head. She could do it too. The war demon bat reacted quickly. The giant blade in his right hand was blocked. He could only raise his left fist to punch Diana. With a clatter, her courage turned into a green chain and was thrown out by Diana. Like a lasso, it bound the war demon bat's left hand and dragged it in her direction. Then, she used the Vulcan's sword to pick up his helmet. I am the god of war. The war demon bat, who was already a little deranged, seemed to have remembered something. He lowered his head and charged forward like a bull. The Vulcan's sword missed, but Diana did not panic. She dodged it and reached out to grab the two bat wings on the war demon bat's helmet. She wanted to pull it down. Diana was afraid that she would pull his head off, so she did not use all her strength. The first pull did not move. The helmet seemed to have fused with the head. It was too late to use more strength. She could only retreat. The two sides quickly exchanged 3 or 4 blows. The opponent did not have the corresponding level of divine power. He was just using human martial arts and divine power to attack. Diana had the upper hand. Chapter 1073. The war demon bat was not without an advantage against Diana. His armor was too sturdy. In the last exchange of blows, Diana's Vulcan's sword slashed across his chest. However, the divine weapon and her strength did not manage to cut through the armor. She only left a crack that was about 10 centimeters long and about a finger wide. This set of armor is made of N metals, the entire body is. Young mistress was a little speechless. She thought about how Eagle Hero and Eagle Maiden had been living frugally, and the two of them had only shared N metals. Their days were miserable. A large hammer would become a medium hammer would become a small hammer. And this guy was rich enough to use N metals to make a full body armor. With the support of divine power and N metals, his strength was limitless, and his entire body was overflowing with energy. Let's end this quickly. Let's take him down together. Sia held the bow in her hand. She did not want to attract Barbato's attention, so she nocked an arrow and shot it out. With the sound of her arrow, the second round officially began. She did not know if the war demon bat did it on purpose. Thea's 2 arrows were blocked by the giant energy blade in his hand. Her weapon's special effect could not be used against such a pure energy blade. Her role was reduced. She could only be responsible for restraining the war demon bat. Diana was in charge of the main offense. The war demon bat did not pay attention to her. Instead, it charged at Diana. Relying on the strong armor, the giant energy blade danced around without leaving any gaps. Every attack was aimed at the vital points. How dare you underestimate me? Thea snorted. Ares used to have this attitude. Now, this war demon bat did not take her seriously. You will regret this. She pulled the bowstring to the fullest and shot at the war demon bat. Whether it was the angle or the direction of the arrow, it was all crooked. The other party seemed a little curious as to why he had shot such an arrow that was out of standard. However, in the next second, Diana raised her elbow and slammed it into his face. The guardian silver bracelet had long since retired, but Diana's strength was 10 times greater than when she was at her strongest. The elbow hit the war demon bat's face and sent him flying more than 10 meters. He landed on Thea's arrow. This was not a prediction. She saw what happened a second later. Their energy levels were not high. One of them was a clone, while the other was a projection. However, the skills they used were of the highest level. It was too easy for 2 max-level accounts to fight the war demon bats. This arrow didn't have any low-level fire or ice abilities. Instead, it had a time-cutting effect. The war demon bat's body seemed to have been cut out of thin air, and it completely disappeared from its body. His left shoulder, scapula, collarbone, upper arm bone, and even his armor and flesh were all brought into time by this arrow. His left arm fell to the ground and blood gushed out from the broken arm. He was severely injured. He was barely able to maintain his posture with the help of the giant blade while muttering something under his breath. Diana was a little disappointed. There was really no challenge. Even if their energy levels were about the same, the huge gap between their realms was not something that could be bridged by a large amount of energy. You've lost. Hand over the helmet and I'll let you go. She pointed her sword at the war demon bat and said coldly. At first, the war demon bat did not react. After more than 10 seconds, he seemed to have regained some consciousness. War gods should not be defeated by ants. The order of the world still needs me to maintain it. With a broken arm, blood gushed out. The war demon bat was not a new god, nor was he an old god. He was just immortal with the power of a god. There was no way he could heal his body. He could only use the giant blade in his hand to burn the wound to stop the bleeding. You are all enemies. Enemies, he roared at the sky like a sad hero. Humph, Milady snorted and signaled Diana to dodge. She pulled the bowstring to its limit again. She aimed at the war demon bat's heart. Strands of death aura were extracted from the world. She pulled very carefully, not wanting to disturb Barbados. She was just a projection, so it didn't matter if she lost it. Diana was here as a clone. It would be a loss if she was injured. The death aura gathered very little. After being compressed, it was only left with a black cyclone the size of a fingernail. It was attached to the arrow. Thea whistled to attract the enemy's attention. At the same time, she released the bowstring. The speed of the arrow did not have any special effects like a meteor chasing after the moon. In fact, it was not fast at all. She whistled and did not prepare for a sneak attack. Milady's arrow did not have much power or angle. It was not even as good as a beginner's arrow. However, this arrow had the power of law. This law was made up by her on the spot. The content was that the war demon bat must die. Although it was not a god, the war demon bat's energy was not ordinary. He had a premonition that he was in trouble. He grabbed the ground, picked up a giant rock, and threw it at the arrow. The arrow ignored the giant rock and went through it like a shadow. There was a muffled sound. The armor that the war demon bat was proud of, and the divine power that was gathered by the Greek gods, could not block this light arrow. The arrow went straight into the bat's chest. It turned into black gas again and spread from the heart to the rest of his body. In less than 2 seconds, the war demon bat fell to the ground. His body started to crack from the inside. It quickly spread to the armor. Even the end metal could not withstand the power of law. He was dead. Thea reached out and tapped the helmet. This helmet that was made by Ares and watered with the blood of the Greek gods left the war demon bat's head. The face under the helmet was a little distorted. She could only vaguely see some features of Bruce between the eyebrows. The rest was mostly Ares. If the laughing bat was the combination of Batman and the Joker, then this war demon bat was the combination of Ares and Batman. The real Batman was probably already dead. Thea passed the helmet to Diana and quickly looked outside. Barbados seemed to have noticed something, but he did not know what the problem was. Let's go back first. As she spoke, she used the connection of her main body to summon the two girls back. This helmet came from the same source as the Greek gods. With Zeus's ability, absorbing it directly would not cause much damage. Moreover, Thea had already killed Ares in the helmet. If anything happened, then Zeus would be a complete idiot. The atmosphere between the two parties was not harmonious. Diana volunteered to deliver the helmet to the heavenly realm, but she did not go. After watching Diana leave the new planet, Thea turned her gaze to the dark multiverse. Barbados, who was just short of writing the words, "I'm the villain," on his face, appeared again. Thea heard a soundless wave. She knew that he was scolding her for not following the rules. She did not argue with him. "I'm not following the rules. What can you do about it? Come at me if you can." Chapter 1074. Seo looked at the figure in the darkness that gradually retreated and carefully identified it again. Then, she turned her head and said to Brosnan, "Bring the old butler back to Gotham first. I think he's pissed off this time. He'll most likely make a move. Why don't you attack earlier, like the previous few times?" "Because the time for the universe fusion hasn't come yet. There's a high chance that the universe fusion will upgrade to an omnipotent universe. It's good for us, and you too. If I start a war now, many people will jump out to stop me. I'm not afraid of one or two, but it's not easy to deal with too many. If she had a choice, she would have gone over and killed Barbados instantly. However, she was not the most powerful person in the universe. If she angered everyone, it would be troublesome. Damien found a cave deep under Gotham. It's exactly the same as the one I saw in the world I went to. However, I remember that 10 years ago, when I explored Gotham's terrain, there was no such cave." Bruce thought about this question for a few days, but he could not find an answer. Theo looked at him in surprise. "Your way of thinking is still stuck in the past. Do you still remember the Bat Tribe? If I'm not mistaken, they were the ones who dug it. To you, the cave didn't exist 10 years ago. However, looking at the overall timeline, the Bat Tribe has been digging for thousands of years." Bruce thought about it and felt that the explanation was a little ridiculous. However, there was no better explanation. He seemed to have thought of another question. "Judging from the remains there, they still have close ties with Gotham City." Thea nodded. "They're from the Owl Court, right? Speaking of which, the court had provided her with a lot of financial help when she was at her weakest. However, their internal organization structure was too loose. They were basically a super large club. The 2 agents she supported had died in internal strife. The court was involved in all aspects of Gotham. Bruce had attacked them several times, but it did not hurt them at all. The Court of Owls is like a Gotham version of Hydra. No matter how convinced you are that they are gone, they will always jump out and slap you in the face. The Wayne family was known as the Wayne Banching. Other than the Wayne Corporation, they also owned various commercial land, resorts, construction companies, chemical factories, and military factories. These companies all belonged to the Wayne family in name, but the real controller had always been the Court of Owls. They used hundreds of years to build and control Gotham City. Thea thought for a moment and said, "Why don't we screen the stubborn Bat Tribe members and let the government deal with the rest?" They quickly decided on the fate of the Court of Owls. Bruce returned to Gotham to monitor the court's every move, while Thea returned to Hell to adjust her Hell Tower in preparation for the future fusion of the 2 universes. While being on guard, Barbados from another universe still made his move. No one knew if he was mad or if he had been planning for a long time, but he made 2 moves. One was terrible, and the other could be said to be a 1-second move. A Batman injected with doomsday cells secretly arrived in the metropolis. He called himself the Ravager. The Superman of that world lost control. Batman injected himself with doomsday cells and easily killed the Superman. But he could no longer turn back. In the early days of his arrival, the Ravager was full of glory. The whole city seemed to tremble under his feet. However, his glory did not last for more than 3 seconds. When Superman arrived with 150 Kryptonian compatriots, the result was as expected. The scene was tragic. 150 Kryptonians, under the leadership of Superman, the new god of strength, surrounded the Ravagers and gave them a good beating. The scene was heartbreaking to the onlookers and made them shed tears. The Ravager was no match for them at all. If he still had Batman's wisdom, he could still struggle a little. Unfortunately, he was more like a beast at this time. 150 stellar-strengthened Kryptonian heroes knocked him down to the ground while singing, and each of them stepped on him. The Ravager's injuries were too serious. Doomsday cells could not repair them. The cells did not know that there were 150 enemies in the outside world. They would only evolve to be stronger than the Kryptonians. However, it was useless. He could defeat one, but he could not defeat 150. In short, this was a classic case of quantity defeating quality in the history of combat. On the other hand, there was bad news. A crimson figure suddenly paid a visit to the central city. It was a powerful extreme speed user. Unlike the colorful phantoms left behind by ordinary speedsters, where he passed at high speed, a large number of dark red bat-like energy phantoms would be left behind. When the speedster arrived at Central City, he immediately rushed to the site of the original cutting-edge technology laboratory. The passage between the two worlds here was extremely weak. Even though Thea had reinforced it several times, it was still not strong enough. He ran at high speed at the weak point of the barrier, trying to reopen the passage between the two universes. The Flash, who had sensed the anomaly, hurried out to stop him. Unfortunately, he had to deal with Batman, who had incredible speed and no bottom line. He was defeated in just 2 rounds. If it were not for Reverse Lightning, who had been hiding in the dark, timely rescue, Barry would have been killed by Batman. Even though the two of them worked together, they were still defeated and fled. By the time Superman and the people of the Righteous Alliance arrived to help, Batman had already escaped and finally broke the barrier between the two worlds. After wreaking havoc in the central city, they fled back to the dark multiverse at once, leaving the extraordinarily dilapidated central city for them. Repairing the barrier between the two worlds, rescuing the injured citizens, and treating Barry, the people of the Righteous Alliance were busy for the whole day. The Ravager's doomsday cells were separated. Superman used the technological device in the Fortress of Solitude to send the cells into the Phantom area. The corpse of Batman, which was not in human form, was pulled away by Bruce. Is this too passive? Can we take the initiative to attack? Superman was a little tired of these Batmen. He did not know if it was Bruce's nightmare, but it was about to become his nightmare. After actively rescuing the injured for the whole day, he asked Thea about it at night. She was also busy for half a day. It was easy to destroy, but difficult to build. The location of Central City was naturally a weak point. It was congenitally deficient and was damaged the day after. It was a big project for her to repair it to the same level as other places. After all, she was dead, not alive. Her power was naturally not good at repairing. It will take about a month to complete the fusion of the two universes. There will definitely be a great battle then, Thea said after observing for a while. If they can attack, then we should be able to fight our way through, right? Superman was puzzled. Chapter 1075. Theo looked around and saw that no one was around before she explained, "You are now a god too. You should be able to feel the joy of the universe. If it wants to be further perfected, it needs the rules of the dark multiverse to supplement it." Superman nodded. She continued, "Of course, we can attack now. But if the guy in the dark multiverse detonates the dark universe in a fit of anger, it will hinder the evolution of the existing universe. If the two universes begin to merge, he will lose the opportunity to detonate the universe, and I will be able to take him down. That's about it." Superman was dizzy from listening and flew away as if he didn't fully understand. For the next month, Earth was shrouded in the shadow of Batman. Every 2 or 3 days, there would be strange Batman popping up to show their existence. For example, the Batman who had escaped before called himself the Red Reaper. Another example was the Lantern of Dawn who returned with First Lantern's curse. This Batman with the green light ring was the nemesis of all the lanterns. He could extinguish the emotional energy in the ring, allowing him to maintain a high level of damage to the lanterns. Another example was Wuxia Wang, who was a woman and could fight underwater with genetic technology. This female version of Batman had added a lot of Atlantean genes to herself and now had the power to control the sea. She was known as the Drowned One. The last was a killing machine who had merged himself with technological products. He could control all electronic devices. Among the few Batmen, he was the biggest threat to Earth. The tug-of-war began. Lantern of Dawn won the first battle. The green and yellow lanterns had different degrees of sacrifice, but his victory came to an end when the other 150 Kryptonians arrived. Although they were all miniature versions of Kryptonians, Lantern of Dawn was no match for them. If he had not run fast enough, he would have been captured. Wuxia the Drowned One was very lethal. There were not many heroes on Earth who could fight underwater. Only Poseidon and Mira could be the main force. With the help of the other superheroes, they barely managed to maintain a tie. The Red Reaper was the most troublesome. This guy was faster than the Flash, not to mention his intelligence. Even if the three speedsters of the Flash family and Reverse Lightning attacked together, they were still defeated. Fortunately, Superman was there to help monitor the world and inform them of the news in time. Traps and anti-traps were used one after another. That was how they were able to maintain the battle situation even though they were lagging behind. The last killing machine was a little tricky. He tried to use the internet to control all of humanity's weapons. Fortunately, Bruce intervened at the last moment. Although the opponent's methods were sharp, Bruce had obtained a lot of advanced technology from Brainiac's spaceship. With the intelligence of a god, he quickly defeated the killing machine in the internet world. A month of blood and fire quickly passed. On this morning, the world remained dark even though it was already 9:30. It was not that the light of the stars was blocked, but that the entire multiverse had become night. All the superheroes, lanterns, and Kryptonians in the Hall of Justice were ready to take part in this once-in-a-lifetime battle. Thea and Diana were not present. They had to deal with the last enemy. The two women had both left the Justice League, and Thea's position was inherited by Oliver. With Green Arrow's experience, she was more than qualified to be an elder of the Justice League. Diana, on the other hand, let her disciple Casey the Wonder Girl enter the Justice League. At the same time, Bruce had also officially left the Justice League, and was replaced by the second-generation Batman, Damian. However, as a young man, he was just an ordinary member like Casey. The three elders, Thea, Diana, and Bruce, had retired. Those who still had decision-making power were Superman, the Flash, Green Arrow, Poseidon, and Hal Jordan. 5 of them. Other than the 5 of them, there was still half a person who had decision-making power, and that was Daniel the Sandman, who stayed as a consultant. Although he did not know when the title of consultant had fallen on his head, Thea was in the underworld. She had met up with Diana, and was making the final adjustments to her underworld tower. Originally, according to the trajectory of events, this should be the Dark World invading the main world, and the process was almost irreversible. However, things were different with the Underworld Tower. With the highest authority, this super-civilization technological equipment that could adjust the frequency of the multiverse began to operate slowly. The main multiverse maintained the original frequency, and at the same time, changed the frequency of the dark multiverse, making the other side close to it for the main multiverse to devour. The heroes of the main multiverse were ready to go. Before they set off, they talked about the things to take note of, and the attack strategy. This was originally Bruce's job, but he was not present today. After all, the enemy that a bunch of people wanted to defeat was Batman, and he was too ashamed to say anything in front of everyone. Since he was not present, as the greatest superhero, Superman took up the role of leader. After being a superhero for more than 10 years, he had an unparalleled reputation today. After an impassioned speech, he asked Daniel about the specific grouping. Teleportation is random, but it is also inevitable. Everything is influenced by the will of the universe, and we can only make some slight changes. At this time, Daniel created a psychedelic 7-color teleportation door, and behind the door was the dark world. Will there be a situation where we are completely restrained by the enemy? Superman asked cautiously. At the mention of this, Daniel was very proud. He snapped his fingers. This problem has been solved. We will enter the world of the original laughing bats first. There are rules of death solidification there, and it can be used as a transit and on-site command center. Our chances of winning are very high. The heroes had nothing to say. They stepped into the teleportation door and entered the world of the laughing bats. As long as we defeat the few deepest nightmares, the whole world will become weak, and our main multiverse will be able to devour this place. Everyone knew who the few nightmares referred to. It was the 4 nightmare versions of Batman that had survived until now. Daniel lowered his head and fiddled with it. Teleportation between universes was much easier, and he could do it just by using the power of dreams. He was judging and capturing the intricate information of the world. Suddenly, he shouted, "I see it, the world of the drowned one. Who wants to enter?" As he spoke, he opened a blue teleportation door at the side. The Sea King laughed heartily and walked out first. "I'll do it, my battle with that guy is not over yet." Of course, Mira could not let him fight alone. This time, the husband and wife had to deal with the drowned one, Bruce Wayne. There were too few heroes who were good at naval battles. Fortunately, there were still talents among the villains. Under the premise that Thea promised to resurrect her father, Black Manta, who had been imprisoned in Atlantis for many years, also came to the scene. Chapter 1076. Black Manta was an ordinary person, but with the help of his own technological equipment, his underwater combat power was not inferior to the Sea King. Other than that, Green Arrow Oliver had also joined the team. He had water armor, so he did not need a bow. His close combat ability was also at the level of a martial artist, so he could provide some help. These worlds are deformed and broken. Do not walk onto the battlefield with compassion. Please remember this, Daniel reminded them before they left. The 4 of them walked into the teleportation circle together. As soon as they stepped out of the door, the seawater that rushed at them gave them a heavy blow. Fortunately, they were skilled. They dove underwater and began to track the drowned person. The water world was completely swallowed by the sea. 99% of the world was seawater. Because of the previous few battles, the Sea King had left a unique tracking mark on the drowned person. It was the divine power of Poseidon's trident, and could not be removed by technological means. The 4 of them swam quickly. They did not speak along the way, and soon found the drowned person, Brucey's hiding place. It was still Gotham, but a city sunk under the sea. Brucey was waiting for them. The woman was wearing a metal mask. Her left eye had been removed and replaced with a technological eye that could see underwater. The mask was crudely made, and it had been corroded by seawater for a long time. There was a faint layer of rust on the surface. Only her nose and chin were exposed under the mask. Her skin was covered in scars, and a piece of her right cheekbone was unnaturally missing. Her feminine beauty was gone. Hee, Sea King. She used a unique vocal organ to speak underwater, and the few of them could hear her. "I once killed a Sea King. You are the second." She raised the trident in her hand. This weapon was a little broken. The original Sea King's trident did not recognize her, so she could only use technology to modify the weapon. Now, this trident could be considered a semi-divine and semi-technological equipment. Surrender. We have entered this world en masse. You can surrender and enjoy life under the sun. The Sea King was still trying to persuade her. Heh. Surrender. What do you know? Do you think I willingly live underwater? Do you think I like having these dirty Atlantean cells? I was forced to do all of this. My world is barbaric and rotten. I've been poor my whole life, and I've been fighting for it. I thought this was an achievable goal, but I was wrong. This is a low-level world. There is nothing here. There was no sunlight or hope in the past, and there will be no hope in the future. There is only vengeance and anger. This world is destined to sink and be destroyed. The Sea King was a little suspicious, as the other party seemed to already know the truth behind the scenes. The Sea King felt that his persuasion this time would be effective, so he said with a serious tone, "I admire your efforts, but there is always a limit to a person's strength. Will you leave this world with us?" The corners of Brucey's mouth curled up into a strange arc. She waved the trident in her hand, and the surrounding seawater squeezed toward the four of them. Damn it! The other party's obvious malice made them curse silently. It seemed that no matter which world they were in, Batman could not be moved by words. Black Manta, who had been on high alert, rushed out of the water. Even though he had no superpowers, he was not afraid at all. He held a water splitter made of special metal in his hand and stabbed it at Brucey's face. An ordinary person. She blocked the water splitter with her trident and scanned it with the technology in her left eye. The result surprised her. An ordinary person was fighting with her in the deep sea. The two of them quickly exchanged blows. Black Manta did not intend to hold back at all. The two water splitters appeared and disappeared mysteriously, and Brucey, who was using a long weapon, was unable to parry them. Seeing that his opponent showed a flaw, his helmet began to gather energy, and a second later, two red lasers were shot out. This time, Brucey was prepared. She swung the trident in a circle and blocked the lasers directly. At the same time, the Sea King and Mira also rushed over, while Green Arrow relied on the water armor on the outside. The Sea King and Black Manta, these two old friends, worked together for the first time, so they were a little unfamiliar with each other. Working together. That was impossible. Mira could only help to control the seawater to put pressure on Brucey and provide opportunities for the Sea King and Black Manta to attack. Unfortunately, Brucey had undergone cruel self-modification surgery. She also had the Atlantean bloodline and the ability to control seawater. Both sides were fighting for control of the seawater. In terms of talent, Mira was definitely stronger. However, Brucey was ruthless to both her enemies and herself. She had forcibly modified her genetic chain and gathered the water control ability of dozens of people on herself. In comparison, Mira was no match for her. Wrapped in a large amount of seawater, her trident was pulled to the side, forming a small whirlpool. She then controlled the seawater to push it out horizontally, directly hitting the Black Manta that was in her way. In terms of water control, she was stronger than Mira. In terms of martial arts, she was stronger than the Black Manta and the Sea King, who had been guarding the lighthouse since young. The two tridents slashed and pierced each other. In just 2 moves, the Sea King, who was average in martial arts, had 3 holes in his shoulder. This tattered, semi-divine, semi-technological trident had some special effect. An unknown substance was mixed into the wound, severely hindering the Sea King's self-healing ability in the seawater. Fortunately, Green Arrow was not far away to help. As a martial artist, he could fight dozens of moves with Batman even with melee weapons. Although fighting underwater was a little awkward, the principles of fighting were still the same. Brucey, the Sea King, and the Black Manta all used the sharpness of their weapons to attack the enemy. Green Arrow pulled out 2 straight swords from the armor, and at the same time, the armor powered the weapons to help resist the power of the divine trident. Oliver's face was serious as he saved the Sea King. One of his swords blocked the trident, and the other went straight for the enemy's left hand. Good skill. The drowned person praised softly. She turned the trident around and used the handle to block the straight swords. At the same time, she opened her mouth and spat out a large amount of ink like black water at the few of them. "Retreat," the Sea King reminded. Green Arrow, Mira, and the Black Manta each pulled back a distance. The ink was the exclusive ability of the drowned person, containing countless wronged souls. Of course, for Brucey, who believed in science, souls did not exist. She believed that the ink was full of the spiritual imprints left by the dead. These spiritual imprints would turn the living into the slaves of the drowned person, combining attack and defense. Brucey used this move to single-handedly destroy Atlantis in her world. Chapter 1077. She had used this move in the Battle of the Main Body and severely injured Mela. Fortunately, Thea had saved her, or else she would have been severely injured even if she had not died. Now, they could only avoid this unsolvable move. The opponent could only spit out a limited amount of ink in a short period of time. As long as they were prepared, it was not difficult to deal with. She ran away. Only the Green Arrow armor had a detection device. The few of them waited in the dark sea for a long time, and in the end, they received such bad news. There was nothing to say. "Let's chase." The thick ink blocked their vision. Even the Sea King and Mela could not see the direction. At this time, Green Arrow's armor came into play. He led the way and chased to the side. When they swam to an underwater cave, Green Arrow was a little hesitant. The magnetic field in the cave was unstable and had been interfering with his armor. The black manta ray that relied on technology was also affected. After a simple discussion with the Sea King, the two quickly made up their minds. They would not go in. Knowing that the opponent had set a trap inside, they would still rush in. How stupid would that be? Although the Sea King and Green Arrow were a little impatient, they had been beaten by reality for so many years. "I don't believe that she has been hiding down there. Let's go back to the surface," the Sea King said, and let Green Arrow and the Black Manta Ray go first while he and Mela stayed behind to guard. Their caution paid off. Realizing that they were not fooled, Brucey could only take the initiative to attack. She hid among a group of fish and hid from Green Arrow's thermal imaging system. However, when she approached carefully, she was discovered by the Sea King, who liked to control underwater creatures. There was a living person hiding in a group of fish. The Sea King attacked without looking. Green Arrow and the Black Manta Ray cooperated with him on both sides. Tridents, water thorns, and straight swords danced up and down. Brucey could not block them and was pierced by the Black Manta Ray on her shoulder and collarbone. Light blue blood flowed out of the wound. However, she did not care and controlled the water flow to block the wound and continued to fight with them. "You actually modified yourself to such an extent." Green Arrow felt that she was terrible and pitiful. She had forcibly changed her genes. Just thinking about it showed how much she had suffered and how much she had suffered. This is the price of power. She yelled and used her left hand to control the water flow to block the Sea King and the Black Manta Ray. She held the halberd in her right hand and swung it at the Green Arrow at lightning speed. If this was on land, Green Arrow would have no difficulty dodging it. His dynamic vision and reaction speed were among the best among superheroes. However, he was still underwater. His vision could react, but his armor was not that sensitive. He could only gather energy and activate the defensive barrier within his armor. This set of armor was made by Thea in the early days. Whether it was in terms of performance or attack, it wasn't outstanding. It was just that it was made with the bones of the shark god, which made it faster underwater. In the face of Brucey's attack, the armor's energy shield was directly shattered, and a huge gash was left on its chest by the trident. The other parts of the armor were slightly inferior, but due to the young Miss's fear of death, its defensive capabilities were still quite good. This time, it did not penetrate the armor. Although Brucey was a little surprised, she didn't care because the huge pressure in the sea would help her destroy the enemy. Green Arrow secretly gave the Sea King a look. The latter understood his tactical intention and pretended to be anxious to attack first. It seemed that he was ready to let Green Arrow leave the deep sea and return to the surface to repair the armor. The enemy wanted to escape, and Brucey certainly wouldn't let go of this opportunity. She began to attack Green Arrow wildly, vowing to kill him with her halberd. The Sea King desperately tried to cover her and shouted from time to time to run. In order to attack first, Brucey naturally relaxed her control of the sea, and Mira was able to regain the initiative. The sea gathered from all directions and rushed towards the battlefield. Brucey paid the price of having her neck pierced by the black manta ray and once again slashed Green Arrow's armor with her halberd. Just as she was about to watch the other party get crushed by the sea, she saw a flash of white light on Green Arrow's body and instantly disappear. Due to the lack of information, she didn't know that Thea had placed teleportation gems on several of her close relatives. Green Arrow was like a bait, firmly attracting her attack. When Brucey realized that she had fallen into the trap, one of the enemy's combat power had disappeared, but she was also seriously injured. She lost control of the sea, and the wound on her neck was even more serious. She didn't know what technology the black manta ray had developed, but the metal on the surface of his water splitter could slow down the healing speed of the Atlantean's body, and it was accompanied by a strong poison. The Sea King was not immune, and Brucey, a pirated version, was even more so. Hee. Blood kept flowing out of her neck, and her strength began to decline. Surrender. You can't beat us. The veins on Mira's forehead bulged, and her ability was mobilized to the extreme. Brucey, whose strength was greatly reduced, could no longer control the sea. She was squeezed into an unusually narrow space and couldn't move. The difference in pressure between the inside and outside caused her to spurt blood. Give up resistance, you still have a chance to redeem yourself. The Sea King stood outside and tried to persuade her to surrender again. The black manta ray curled his lips, still on guard. Brucey, who was trapped in layers of water, smiled silently. Her smile was full of cruelty and bloodthirst. Her body began to expand violently, and ink flowed out of her body uncontrollably. The pressure on Mira increased sharply, and she could only mobilize more of her mental strength to hold on. The souls in the black ink were squeezed into a small space, and the last thing the Sea King heard was Brucey's crazy and joyful cry. In the next second, the water space exploded from the inside out. Mira was directly injured, and she spat out a mouthful of blood and fell into a coma. The Sea King did not have time to check on his wife's injuries, and quickly swam away with her. The black manta ray swam quickly, and the black ink spread rapidly in the sea. Countless fish were caught in it, lost their nature, and began to provide energy for the black ink. The Sea King and the black manta ray swam for hundreds of miles, and only then did they escape Brucey's crazy self-explosion attack. They rested for a while, and checked according to the magic talisman that Daniel had prepared in advance. After confirming Brucey's death, they returned to the original Laughing Bat world. The source of the nightmare was solved, but for the Earth of this world, the loss was also great. 1/3 of the sea was contaminated by the black ink, and the remaining life forms were once again destroyed. The sea may be clear again in the future, but that would be a long time in the future. Mira was treated by the green lamp and the blue lamp, and it took a while for her to wake up, but she was still a little weak. As the first to end the battle, the Sea King saw that his wife's breathing was stable, and asked about the situation of the other battlefields. Chapter 1078. At the same time, in another world, in another broken Gotham. A few figures were running at full speed. This was the world of the Red Reaper. Batman hated himself for not being able to save Nightwing, Tim, and the others in time, so he tied up the Flash and drove the Batmobile into the space of seraphic speed. Batman and the Flash merged into one. He returned with the power of seraphic speed and killed all the Gotham villains in the next 10 seconds. Today, he was playing a game of hunt and counterhunt with the Flash from another world, Reverse Lightning. Psyker, go to East Street and block him. Caitlin, use your ability to create speed bumps at the 3 intersections in front. Run. Barry. Run. The one in command was Reverse Lightning. He didn't care about the Red Reaper, but Thea promised to send him back to the 25th century. This time, he was here to fulfill the promise. Barry, Psyker, Caitlin, and Reverse Lightning, who was disguised as Dr. Wells, the 4 of them reunited after a few years to fight for the same goal. Unfortunately, they couldn't find the close relationship they had in the past. They didn't hide their vigilance against each other, but fate, or perhaps Thea's bad taste, still brought the 4 of them together. Although the conflict was huge, it didn't affect Reverse Lightning's plan. The few of them wanted to resist his orders, but they also had a desire from the depths of their hearts. Fighting side by side again, it seemed like a good idea. This thought appeared in the deepest part of their hearts, but no one said it out loud. The Red Reaper's speed was faster than the 2 of them. His intelligence was also higher than Reverse Lightning's. In terms of familiarity with Gotham, the 4 of them added together couldn't compare to him. But even with the advantage in every aspect, he was still evenly matched with the 4 of them. This seemingly disunited but actually very united Lightning Squad was much more difficult to deal with than he expected. Countless Crimson Bat shadows appeared behind him. He was a little embarrassed at this time. He took a big turn to avoid the road that was frozen by Caitlin and ran quickly up the building. However, this delay allowed the Flash to catch up with him from behind. On the other side, Reverse Lightning was also in an angle with him. He could only change directions again and run east. Psyker, get ready. 3, 2, 1. Seeing that the enemy had fallen into his trap, Reverse Lightning quickly commanded through his headset. Psyker could temporarily sever the connection between this group of extreme speed users and the God's Speed Force. Although it was only for a short period of time, in the midst of high-speed running, that momentary lapse in connection could affect the entire situation. After that, without looking at where the Red Reaper was, he directly used his shockwave ability to cut off the connection between this space and the space of the Speed Force. Dodge, open, Psyker. Static came from the earpiece, and a few words could be vaguely heard. The Red Reaper, which was supposed to lose its balance and fall to the ground, was not affected at all. Instead, it was the 2 speedsters on his side who stopped and started running again when they saw that he was in danger. The Red Death grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. His opponent's arm was very strong, and it was not difficult for him to catch him with one hand. The power of science. You guys probably don't know that the power of seraphic speed can also be stored, right? The Red Reaper pointed to its ear, indicating that there was a microphone there that could monitor their conversation. At the same time, Psyker noticed that there was something similar to a battery on the man's chest. Presumably, that was the device he used to store the power of his divine speed. The monitoring was deciphered, and the plan was countered. It could be said that Reverse Lightning had completely lost this round. His friends could not save him in time, and Psyker could only save himself now. He hurriedly used his shockwave on himself, and at the critical moment, he performed beyond his usual level and entered the angle between 2 worlds. The Red Reaper's arm swept past his shadow, and he was slightly stunned. After waiting for a second, he realized that he could not come out once he entered. He laughed and turned around to deal with Caitlin, who had used her speed reduction. Psyker. Barry ran to his side, touched the shadow, made hand gestures, and mouthed. He realized that this guy had gotten him in, but he had overused his ability and could not come out for a while. Pull him out, Reverse Lightning ordered, and he went after the Red Lightning himself. Barry tried a few methods, but none worked. He had no choice but to use his own high-speed shockwave to try to find the frequency where Psyker had lost him. He was lucky, and soon he pulled his good friend out. At this time, the Frost Killer was already in a difficult battle. She tried to fly at first, but she was thrown down by the Red Reaper's lightning. It was too late for her to take off. She could only release her cooling ability in a large area, and as a direct descendant of Thea, she also had a slowing grenade modified by the tortoise's inert wave. However, this thing did not differentiate between the speed reduction and the speed reduction, so she did not dare to use it casually. The result of slowing down the grenade would most likely be that she would not be able to move, and the opponent would take her life slowly and easily. She needed the cooperation of the outside world. A green grenade appeared in her hand, and there was no blind spot in a 3-meter radius around her body. Caitlin stared at the Red Reaper, who had been looking for an opening in the periphery, and both sides were in a stalemate. Retreat first. The communication channel was bugged, and the initial plan was a complete failure. Reverse Lightning entered the battlefield and took Caitlin away. On the other side, Barry also took Psyker away. The four of them regrouped. They all had a certain level of scientific literacy, but they did not know how the Red Reaper had eavesdropped on their conversation. Reverse Lightning checked the equipment, and it was obvious that it was not his problem, but the opponent's technology was too advanced. As a transmigrator, being beaten by the technology of the so-called primitive people, this made him very unhappy. This world is collapsing, we don't have much time left. Caitlin looked out of the window, the Earth's crust was shaking slightly, and the pale red sun in the sky seemed to be within reach. A large amount of static electricity was brewing in the clouds, and it was a doomsday scene. The fusion of the two multiverse was accelerating. I can feel a different voice in the Red Reaper's body. The Barry Allen here is still conscious, maybe we can try to wake him up. Barry's feelings towards Reverse Lightning were very complicated now. The grudges from the past could not be explained clearly, he could only suppress his discomfort and focus on the mission. Reverse Lightning was still wearing the face of Dr. Wells. He smiled meaningfully. I'm afraid it won't be easy, Barry, put away your meaningless sympathy, let's return to reality, we can create a gravitational field. The contempt in his tone made Barry very unhappy. Have you always been so cold? Did the you I know really exist? Seeing that they were about to quarrel, Psyker and Caitlin hurriedly pulled the two of them apart and pulled their attention back to the enemy. Chapter 1079. They were working hard to break out of this situation. The battle in the other universe was already in full swing. The elites of the Seven Lanterns were fighting against the Dawn Lanterns. They could eliminate emotional energy and use nightmares to reappear. Overwhelming evilness rolled back toward the Seven Lanterns. The fusion of the two universes accelerated, allowing the Lanterns to finally use most of their abilities. Red Lanterns were still at the forefront. Attikitis led his subordinates and charged through the nightmares. However, the Dawn Lanterns were very effective against their lantern rings. Not only did Attikitis not reach them, but he was also heavily surrounded. If not for the Holy Walker's help, he would have died in the endless nightmares. Although I don't like to say this, we need to gather the power of the Seven Lanterns to defeat this guy. Sinisto said as he raised his left hand and pointed his lantern ring at the Dawn Lanterns. The other lanterns responded. Green lanterns, blue lanterns, purple lanterns, red lanterns, green lanterns, and finally the reluctant orange lanterns. The seven-colored light gathered together like a colorful beam of light that shot straight toward the Dawn Lanterns. You all deserve to die. You're all enemies of emotions. This Batman, who was chosen by the unknown lantern ring, looked at the beam of light as if he was looking at his father's murderer. His lantern ring seemed to have unlimited energy. It was crazy enough to resist more than 500 lanterns alone. Where does his lantern ring get its energy from? Hal Jordan could not understand and could not help but ask Sinisto beside him. Uncle Seth looked at him strangely. How would I know? He's extracting emotions from this parallel universe. If we don't defeat him in time, this universe will definitely explode. Qing knew. who had always been inconspicuous, suddenly said. Sinisto glanced at Qing Nu. She said that, right? Qing Nu knew that she was referring to the young mistress. She nodded. Deliberately mystifying. Sinisto said with disdain, but his spirit was already at its limit. The lantern ring's energy was operating at full capacity. With the 7 lantern cores' unremitting efforts, or rather, with their numbers, the 7-colored beam of light gradually suppressed the dark green fluorescence that represented nightmares. No, it's not enough. Keep it up. Hal Jordan cheered his teammates on as he observed the situation. Finally, under Sinisto's strange, disdainful, and nostalgic gaze, he loudly shouted the green light oath. It would be much easier if White Lantern was here. Why hasn't that guy come in yet? Sinisto asked Qing Nu. The Green Lamp tribe's teleportation ability was very sharp. Now, the army was basically relying on them to maintain the battle. Qing Nu contacted the people behind her and shook her head. Renault is still trying to get used to the emotions here. The world of darkness is putting a lot of pressure on him. He still needs some time. Tell him to hurry up, or else he'll have to collect our corpses. Attikitis said angrily. The dark multiverse could be said to have handled the first wave of attacks quite well. Apart from Brucey the Drowned's self-detonation, the other battlefields maintained a defensive stance. Silently observing everything, Thea remained silent for a long time. The Lightning Squad was having a hard time dealing with the Red Reaper, so she was prepared to add more reinforcements. The 7 lanterns seemed to have a slight advantage against the Lantern of Daybreak. When Kyle Renault joined the battle, this advantage would determine the victory. Superman and the Kryptonian warriors were completely defeated by the killing machines. This Batman, who had fused with machines, created countless mechanical armies. Each of them had a high-quality imitation kryptonite dagger, and the Kryptonian warriors were crying for their parents. If it were not for the timely rescue by the Martian hunters, they would have suffered a lot of casualties. The Dark Multiverse did not only have the 7 evil Batman, but also many parallel worlds. Some of the scarecrows had become the king of the world, and the fear gas had spread all over the world. Some of the two-faced men's laundry detergent business had spread all over the country and even out of the solar system. In short, the heroes were sent out to eliminate these nightmares that had become reality. The heroes with a bottom line against the villains with no bottom line won more than lost. The situation was not good. Thea nodded to Diana, and the Valkyrie appeared in the world of the laughing bats in full armor. Bang! 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 She hit the shield with the sword in her hand, creating echoes. The halo of courage surged in every corner of the dark multiverse. The heroes' morale was greatly boosted, and the villains were somewhat restrained. The Valkyrie's intention was simple. She was inviting Barbados to battle. Both of them were at the level of the multiverse. Barbados was at the peak of the multiverse, and his combat power was stronger than Diana's. In order to not let the courage spread to this world, he had to accept the challenge. Although he knew that Thea had other plans in the future, he did not have many chips in his hands. Ever since the connection between Bruce and the Dark Universe was cut off, he had been passive. Shaking his body, he stood up from the darkest abyss. His mountain-like body crossed the distance of space and came before Diana. It had a black hood, huge bat wings, and skin that was as gray as a corpse. At this level, there was not much difference whether he had a weapon or not. Without a word, he clawed at Diana from thousands of meters away. The Valkyrie still maintained her normal body shape. She blocked with the shield and deflected the force. At the same time, she slashed at Barbados' palm. Clang! There was a crisp sound as if she had hit a piece of metal. The Vulcan sword, which had been forged with precious materials many times, did not leave a single mark on Barbados' skin. The other party laughed silently. His right hand turned from a claw to a slap. At the same time, his left hand slapped from another direction as if he was swatting a mosquito. Diana calmly judged the interval between the attacks. She threw out a lasso and bound the little finger of Babado's right hand, dodging the slap like a swing. Then, she jumped onto his arm and ran up along it. White translucent flame surrounded her body. That was the fire of justice. Although the temperature was not high, it would never die out. A path of flames began to burn Babado's arm. He let out a sound wave at Diana. The sound wave was earth-shattering, like an unstoppable wall of air. Diana did not retreat. Instead, she advanced and charged at the wall of air. As soon as she came into contact with it, she felt that her ears were filled with noise. The noise was so strong that it affected her divine king body. Her entire body shook like a small boat in a storm. However, her divine position persevered. She ignored all obstacles, overcame all discomfort, and charged in the fixed direction. Seeing that the difference in strength between the two was not too big, Thea was relieved. Daniel walked to her side. Now, this Sandman Reserve could not tell if this was his own trial or if he was being pulled by the heartless lady to do her own work. Since he had boarded the pirate ship, he could only continue to complete the mission. "Have you collected everything?" Thea asked. Daniel nodded in annoyance. He raised his hand and took out a metal mountain more than 100 meters tall. "All the end metal in the multiverse is here." Chapter 1080. "You want to reshape the divine metal?" Daniel asked curiously. "Yes." "Can you do it without a furnace?" Thea said proudly. "I can, but you can't." With that, she ignored the unhappy Daniel and looked towards the depths of the dark multiverse. That was the core of the dark multiverse, the place originally known as the furnace. Just like what she had told Batman and the others, apart from the Watchers and the Anti-Watchers, there was also a third party set up in the rules of creation. The Watchers created, the Anti-Watchers destroyed, and the third party was like a daily antivirus software that would isolate and clean up all nightmares and unfavorable factors that should not exist, allowing the world to develop smoothly and orderly. At least, that was God's plan. Unfortunately, everything would change with time. The Watchers gave birth to the concept of self, and they did not want to perish with the Anti-Watchers destroying the universe. They resisted and won in the end. At the same time, they gave up their job of creation and changed it to surveillance. Needless to say, the Anti-Watchers were synonymous with democracy fighters. They would rather destroy their own martial arts in order to pursue freedom, and were finally let go by Thea. The series of changes affected the third party as well. A horseshoe nail affected an entire empire. The variables that started with Bruce kept accumulating and finally reached the third party. He was killed by his own assistant, a dragon that specialized in devouring nightmares. The dragon later changed its name to Barbados and stayed in the depths of the dark multiverse until today when Diana challenged it to a battle. Thea refined the end metal into the divine metal. The first prerequisite was to see how the furnace worked. The third party had been using it for countless years and must have its own method. It would save a lot of trouble if she could learn from it. Daniel looked at his little sister stretching her neck to look at it for a long time. Just as he wanted to let Thea rest for a while, she sighed in relief. "That's easy. I thought it would be difficult." Thea closed her eyes slightly as her slender hand stroked the metal mountain. She did not need a hammer, anvil, or flame to understand the manufacturing process. She could refine the metal that represented the original power of the universe out of thin air. Soon, the fluorescent dots were smelted again. The end metal, or should it be called the ninth metal, was purified into the original power. This was the 10th metal, the divine metal. Thea raised her hand and sent the divine metal into the dark multiverse. Barbados suddenly saw this scene and realized her goal. He hurriedly tried to stop her. Too late. Idiot. Diana laughed and tied the lasso around Barbato's neck. Using all her strength, she pulled back 2 steps. After that, the flames of the fire god's sword were completely extinguished and replaced by the fire of justice. She raised the sword and slashed twice at Barbato's defenseless back. Seeing that he could not stop the metal from entering, he was forced to retreat twice in a row. He could only turn back and continue to attack Diana. With the help of the divinity metal, the heroes throughout the dark multiverse had their strength, speed, and stamina greatly increased. At the same time, their lethality towards the dark creatures had also reached a ridiculous level. The heroes' counterattack began. Kyle Rayner had an additional set of armor that resembled a sacred garment over his white tights. An even brighter white light shone in the dark multiverse. With his addition, the 7-Lantern Corps was finally able to dispel the nightmarish manifestation of the Lantern of Dawn. No. Today will be your doomsday. He was still resisting tenaciously. More strange creatures that were completely incomprehensible were manifested. Faced with the continuous attacks of the 7 lanterns and the white lanterns, the nightmarish manifestations roared and struggled. They wanted to devour all emotions. A vague figure appeared behind the Lantern of Dawn. It was the remnant of First Lantern's will. He no longer cared about the time he had left. He wantonly extracted the universe's emotions and turned them into nightmarish manifestations to attack the lanterns. The ability to extinguish emotions was very domineering, and the manifestation that ignored the ring's upper limit was also very powerful. However, First Lantern was already dead. With that remnant of his will and evil Batman's own will, he was able to fight against 500 lanterns and Kyle Rayner. Especially with Kyle Rayner's divine metal, the combination of First Lantern and evil Batman was completely defeated. When the nightmare manifestation saw the white lantern, it was like snow meeting sunlight and quickly turned into nothingness. The energy beam of the 7-Lantern Corps then pounced. The Lantern of Dawn's struggle was meaningless. In the end, with a vicious curse, he was completely destroyed by the energy beam along with his ring, leaving nothing behind. The lanterns went to different parallel universes to destroy the source of the local nightmares after a little rest. The Lightning Squad had also received the bonus of divine metal. Previously, they were almost wiped out. Not only was Red Reaper fast and intelligent, but he also had a lot of black technology equipment. He even had Captain Frigid's freeze gun. As he ran, he would turn around and shoot, making the Flash and Reverse Lightning unable to take it. Fortunately, metal fell from the sky and evened out the speed difference between the two sides. Caitlin, throw. Reverse Lightning didn't care if the other party could eavesdrop and shouted loudly. Boom! The speed reduction grenade exploded among the 3 extremely fast people. The 3 of them were as slow as turtles. Red Reaper used several types of technology equipment in succession, but he still couldn't get rid of this speed reduction. When he was about to continue experimenting, the Flash and Reverse Lightning had already walked up to him. Well, they walked up to him slowly. Hee hee. Red Reaper found that this speed reduction was very fair. He lost his speed, and so did the other party. He immediately waved his fist and attacked the 2 of them. It turned out that even without the power of speed, Batman, who had 127 types of martial arts, could beat the Flash and Reverse Lightning who had lost their speed advantage. Reverse Lightning was more of a scientist than a warrior. Barry had gone to the police academy, but he majored in crime scene investigation. His combat skills were sloppy and ordinary, so he was no match for Red Reaper. Red Reaper used his joint skills to break one of Barry's arms. When he heard footsteps behind him, he rushed forward and turned around. The attack he imagined didn't happen. He saw Reverse Lightning holding something that looked like a camera in his hand. The other party smiled at him. With a click, a colorful and countless colors exploded in front of him. Red Reaper's expression was confused at first, then pain, and finally ferociousness. Spots of golden light came out of his body. When the effect of the speed reduction grenade disappeared, he was already kneeling on the ground with his head in his hands. "Is he okay?" Barry asked. Reverse Lightning glanced at him and didn't say anything. Psyker hurriedly explained to his good friend the principle of his invention and reverse lightnings. A bunch of words about creatures, brains, and spectra. It sounded like he understood, but he didn't really understand. Chapter 1081. In less than half a minute, the Red Reaper's body began to change. The dark red bat shadows began to disappear and were replaced by gold. Suddenly, the red battle suit began to dissipate from his body. The divine metal that covered the sky of the dark multiverse also descended in the next second and surrounded him. Waves of black gas were squeezed out of his body, and at the same time, a golden suit appeared on his body. The members of the Lightning Squad looked at each other, wanting to know what this change meant. "I'm Barry. Most of that guy has been expelled. His body is now under my control, at least for now." The other party took off his mask. His face was still Bruce's, but his voice had become Barry. It was the kind Barry of this original world. "I've suppressed that evil thought." "You've won," the Golden Barry said emotionally. The Lightning Squad did not really trust him, but after Daniel confirmed it, they accepted the result. The last world was the world of killing machines. In that world, Batman used technology to copy the old butler, Ah Fu, and turned the old butler into a terrifying virus program. Batman didn't realize it at all, and allowed the virus to merge with him. In the end, he became a monster that could control countless machines. The machines were very powerful, but with the cooperation of Batman, Luthor, and Mr. Excellent, they still managed to break into the opponent's computer network, erased the old butler's virus, and made the killing machines go offline. The main nightmare worlds were purified. The final moment had finally arrived. Superman and Bruce, who were wearing the divine metal armor, rushed to help Diana. Two dark rays shot out from Bruce's eyes. It was the Omega Ray that he had just fused before joining the battle. However, he was still a little weak and could not fully unleash the power of the rays. Seeing the rays shooting out of his good friend's eyes, Superman felt that it was strange, but he quickly composed himself and focused on the battle. Similarly, he activated the stellar energy in his body and shot out two rays. Barbados was stronger than them, but not to the point where he could ignore them. He could only wave his left hand and deflect their rays from left to right. Diana saw an opening. She stomped on the ground and flew out. The long sword in her hand was covered in the flames of justice. She slashed a huge wound more than 10 meters long from the opponent's lower abdomen to his chest. At the same time, Superman and Bruce launched their own attacks. Barbatos's huge body made him lose focus. However, as a dragon that had devoured nightmares, his body was huge. Now that he had been corroded by nightmares, he did not have the ability to shrink. He could only bite the bullet and deal with them. Diana was slightly weaker than him. The two of them had been fighting for half a day. She was not an enemy that could be defeated in a short time. Barbatos had placed her at the end. He measured the strength of Superman and Bruce in his heart and was prepared to use one of them to break the stalemate. Superman was also abandoned. Obtaining the strength deity position allowed his strength to reach a higher level. Barbatos felt that he wouldn't be able to take down Superman in a short period of time. In the end, he set his sights on his biological son, Bruce, whom he had been secretly observing for a long time. Taking a deep breath, he aimed at Bruce and spat out a breath of darkness. This was a skill that originally belonged to him. Now, he had added a sonic attack and negative energy attack. As someone who had dared to fight Darkseid head-on as Immortal, Bruce did not have much fear. The divinity metal had also greatly strengthened his abilities. He flew up and moved continuously in the air. Not only did he dodge the attack, but he also approached Barbatos. Two bat darts made of dark divine power shot out. At the same time, he kicked Barbados in the face. B****. Barbados was furious that Bruce, who he thought was an ant, attacked him. He reached out his huge hand, wanting to crush Bruce. At this moment, Superman flew to his other side. With his arms in front of him, he slammed into Barbados's waist like a cannonball. Diana assisted at the right time, creating another huge wound on his neck. After a few exchanges, Barbados finally realized the danger he was in. He stopped fighting and turned to run. Even if he lost this time, as long as he could hide in the depths of the furnace, he could still make a comeback. At this moment, Sia, who was in the underworld, knocked an arrow on her bow, pulled the bowstring fully, and shot an arrow at the dark world from afar. This arrow had already broken through the limits of speed, time, and space. It tore through space and was already in front of Barbados when it appeared again. She wants to kill me. This thought surfaced in Barbados's mind. How dare she do this? Isn't she afraid of destroying the balance of the universe? At this critical moment, he did not have time to think. In the face of death, he did not dare take it head-on. He did not use any void-type skills. His tall body quickly twisted, preparing to dodge the arrow physically. Afraid that it would not be safe, he covered his body with a thick layer of pure black energy. Thea really did not plan to kill him. The arrow brushed past Barbados's cheekbone and flew behind him. This arrow doesn't seem to be anything special. He was filled with doubts. At this moment, a loud voice shouted from behind him, "I know how to shoot arrows too." Diana grabbed the arrow, took out her longbow, and knocked the arrow. Her actions were done in one breath. In hell, Thea smiled at this scene. She picked up her longbow again, but she did not draw the arrow. Instead, she drew the bow empty. Diana felt a sudden power in her body. Using the arrow as a channel, Thea's shadow appeared behind her. The two were connected mentally, and their actions overlapped. As their shadows merged, Diana let go of the bowstring. The arrow pierced through the sky and returned to Barbados. With a poof, the power of death broke through the shield and stabbed Barbados's heart with the power of justice. This power of death seems a bit weak. It can't kill me, right? This was the last thought that appeared in Barbados's mind. Then, he fell into a deep sleep. In the outside world, his body was being burned by the fire of justice. In the blazing fire, a large number of dark nightmares were destroyed. Barbados's body began to change. Thea, who was in hell, moved her mind again. The divine metals all over the dark multiverse left their original hosts, crossing the distance between planes and flying to this final battlefield. The pure metals covered Barbados like rain. When all the metals arrived, the purification speed of the black gas began to accelerate. In the end, Barbados was completely sealed in the metal. From afar, it looked like a metal egg. Thea reached out and took the metal egg. She threw it into the deepest part of the furnace and sealed it forever. The creation rule had a time limit. The world now did not need watchers, anti-watchers, or a third party. Naturally, it did not need a dragon that could devour nightmares. Chapter 1082. Intelligent beings would find their own direction of development. They had enough courage and faith to face all challenges. From now on, the nightmares would still retaliate. However, should they jump out one by one or jump out all at once? Thea felt that the former was more reasonable. It was better to let them go. Conflicts, conspiracies, and conflicts of interest should be resolved as soon as possible. It was better than relying on supernatural powers to suppress them. All the superheroes retreated from the dark multiverse. Thea began to control the underworld tower with all her might. Finally, the two multiverses were synchronized. The fusion of the universes began. The dark multiverse and the main multiverse were no longer connected by those few people or the nightmares. Instead, they were truly fused and became the dark side of the main multiverse. Looks like it's going to take a long time. Diana put away her weapon and returned to the underworld. She stood beside Thea and asked. Yes, I estimate that it will take another 1,000 years to complete the final fusion. When that time comes, evil will erupt once again. Thea silently calculated the progress and came up with a shocking number. Just the initial fusion would take 1,000 years. Diana looked at the superheroes on Earth. After 1,000 years, there won't be many of them left. Thea patted her shoulder. Follow the laws of nature and let the heroes rest. I will always be by your side. Justice will never decline. I left some end metal for the superhero army. They will inherit the legacy of their predecessors and continue to fight evil in the 31st century. You have to trust the young people. Diana rolled her eyes. You speak as if you're very old. Thea chuckled and patted her back. The war is finally over. Let's go back to Earth and play for a few days. Earth was still the same. Thea fulfilled her promise and resurrected Black Manta's father. She also sent Reverse Lightning away. Golden Berry from the Dark Multiverse did not return to the main multiverse with them. He felt that the Dark World was his home. He wanted to continue to maintain peace there and rebuild his home. The superheroes returned to their homes. They took off their hoods and returned to the crowd, living their ordinary lives and extraordinary adventures. A month later, in Gotham, a wedding was being held in Wayne's old house. The famous Bruce Wayne returned to the public eye. He was going to marry the commoner Selina Kyle today. Celebrities gathered together, and superheroes hid their identities to attend this hard-won wedding. Catwoman had successfully written her name into the Wayne family's genealogy, turning herself into Selina Wayne. Her wish of 20 years had finally been fulfilled today. At this moment, she was smiling happily at the guests, or the fat sheep in her eyes. Thea felt that 70% of it was because of love, and the other 30% was because of money. Damien was happy to have a stepmother. At this moment, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only pull a long face and pretend to be deep in thought. Formal church wedding, vows, rings, flowers, celebrations. At night, the guests left, and the place belonged to the heroes. Looking at the noisy crowd, Diana suddenly felt a little sad. The heroes had already settled down and had entered middle age. Now, even Bruce had a home. It seemed like it was the end of an era, right? Seeing her sadness, Thea pulled her out of Wayne's old house. Where are we going? Diana was wearing a long dress today. She was tall and beautiful, but a little lazy. We're going to get married too. Diana was shocked by the young lady's words. Then she covered her mouth and giggled. My identity is British. America's same-sex marriage law is invalid for me. Thea snorted. The law can't bind us anymore. Bruce worships a fake god. Today, we'll find the real god to be the MC. Then she looked to the side. What do you think? The existence that she could still be so courteous and respectful to even now, was on the verge of being revealed. Xianxia from the Phantom Stranger family walked out like an old man. Diana almost exclaimed. Why was there a dog? And it looked a little old. But she believed that Thea wouldn't mess around. She would just watch quietly. I think. Xianxia glanced at the young lady and decided to give her face. I think it's okay. Thea clapped her hands to show her joy. Then, do you want your real body to come or? My real body can't come. I only have a piece of my consciousness. Xianxia's expression was unreadable. Thea frowned slightly and decided not to force it. So be it. Seeing that she nodded, Xianxia scratched her face and disappeared with a weird expression. 1 second later, the whole world trembled, symbolizing the arrival of a majestic being. "Who is this?" Diana asked in a small voice. "A piece of consciousness left by God. He calls himself the voice of heaven. Let's change." Diana was a little embarrassed, but under Thea's gaze, she quickly changed into a pure white wedding dress. Thea gave her a look that said, "You know what's good for you," and changed into a suit. Regardless of their status in the sparring, in the outside world, Thea, who had the highest combat power, represented the image of the two. A blurry face appeared in the sky. It covered the sky, but even so, it couldn't completely enter this world. It was too big for this world. Then, the voice of heaven asked, "Miss Thea Quinn, are you willing to marry Miss Diana Prince? Are you willing to take care of her, protect her, love her, and never leave her?" Needless to say, the voice of heaven was very powerful. With just a few simple words, it became the law of the world and entered the wall of origin with his words. Diana looked at her with happiness. Her face was filled with excitement and longing. 5 minutes ago, they were still at Bruce's wedding. Thea didn't hesitate and said loudly, "I am willing." The voice of heaven asked Diana this time, "Miss Diana Prince, are you willing to marry Miss Thea Quinn? Regardless of whether he is rich or poor in the future, regardless of whether he is healthy or sick, are you willing to be with him?" The voice of heaven's tone was weird when he asked this. How could it be? Sick? Poor? If Thea, the second sister of death, encountered these two things, then the whole multiverse would probably explode. As if she thought of the question's wording, Diana held back her laughter and quickly nodded. "I am willing." The voice of heaven's voice echoed throughout the whole DC world. Whether it was in the multiverse, the realm of gods, or the overseer's realm, his voice covered all planes. "I declare you husband and wife. This will not change until the end of the world." End.